What's up guys, I hope you're all well. So today's video is going to be a missing persons video. This video hits pretty close to home for me. Unlike the other video that was nearby to where I'm living currently in Queensland, this case actually happened really close to where I was living originally in Melbourne. I just want to give a quick disclaimer that this video was made for educational and awareness purposes only. It was not made to offend or disrespect anyone, and especially those involved, and my condolences go out to the family and friends of Bung. So today we're going to be talking about the missing persons case of Siriboon, also known as Bung Siriboon. Bung was born on the 30th of December 1997 in Thailand to her mother Vanita. Bung also had an older sister named Pang, who was quite significantly older. A lot of resources did say that there was a bit of an age gap between the two. Bung was known to love school. She particularly excelled in maths. She loved music and dancing, and especially loved Justin Bieber, as most teenage girls in that time did. Bung's father was absent for the first part of her childhood. Bung eventually, at the time of her disappearance, did have a stepfather named Fred. Fred started visiting Thailand in the mid-90s when he had a fascination with Buddhism and the Asian culture and martial arts. Fred continued to visit regularly, having saved up a lot of his annual leave pay, so he kept going back and forth from Thailand to Melbourne. However, in Melbourne in 2004, Fred met Vanita, who was on holiday here. As Fred had learnt some Thai and had, a basic understanding of the culture and the language, him and Nid hit it off. In 2006, Fred decided to actually move to Thailand with Nid to start a marriage and start a life together. They started a business making awnings, but unfortunately the business failed. It didn't do too well, and so Fred decided to move back to Australia to find more work. He was actually hoping to find a work in the mining industry, doing fly in, fly out jobs, but he eventually landed a job working for Cadbury actually. In 2008, the rest of the family that was still living in Thailand decided to fly to Melbourne, Australia and join him. And obviously it would have been relatively easy for them to fly over and live with Fred in Melbourne because Nid and Fred were married, so they would be able to get a visa. They eventually settled down and bought a house in Elsie Street, Boronia of Melbourne, Australia. And this is, where they wanted to have the girls have a safe upbringing. They wanted them to go to school in Australia and get a really good education, so that if they were to ever move back to Thailand, the girls would have a one-up on every other child there. They would be really proficient in English and they would overall have a really good education. The two girls were enrolled at Boronia College, which is obviously in Boronia. Overall, everyone that knew them said that they had a relatively normal family life. Bung would occasionally argue with her mum and her sister, but that's not really out of the ordinary. A lot of girls, 13-year-old girls especially, do, argue with their older sister and their mother. There was nowhere that I could really find that said that Bung ever had disagreements with her stepfather Fred, although I'm sure being a 13-year-old girl and having a stepfather, there probably was some, arguments along the way, whether they were bad or not. Bung and the family lived just a short 10-minute walk from Boronia College where the girls went to school. On Thursday, the 2nd of June 2011, the school day started like any other. This is kind of where the timing gets a little bit misconstrued, because some resources say it was about 8 a.m. and others say it was 8:30, others say 8:25. So it's kind of unclear at what time this next thing happened. I'm just going to go with what my most credible source said, which can also kind of give off a bit of weird evidence, because the timing just doesn't really add up. But that's the most reliable thing I could find. So at approximately 8:30 a.m, Bung, after finishing her breakfast, said goodbye to her father, who had just come home from a night shift and was actually going to bed, and her mother, and set off for her usual 10-minute walk to school. Bung was wearing her white and blue uniform, a blue raincoat, and she also had a school backpack with her. When Bung left her house, she crossed Elsie Street and started heading east. Just 3 doors up from where Bung lived, a dog started barking and a neighbour and Bung made eye contact shortly after through the window. This neighbour has actually come forward and said that this was correct and that he had saw Bung walking to school that day. Elsie Street ends at Albert Avenue, which is a busy main road that Bung cross every single morning. I myself have driven up and down that road many times, going to different events, different things. Basketball, I used to drive up that road. It is a very busy main road. It's just one lane each way, but there's so many little side streets coming off it, and there's schools nearby, and during the mornings at that time, it is a very busy road to be on and to walk across. After Bung crosses busy Albert Avenue, she turns left into Harcourt Road. Harcourt Road is a quieter street, just a suburban street with houses on, which she then turns left off Harcourt Road and onto Moncro Street. Moncro Street was actually a dead-end road, and the end of that road led into the back gate of the school. So that's where Bung was going. She was going down that road. Obviously, it's a bit quieter, it's a dead-end road, but it does lead into the back gate of the school. To my knowledge, that road at that time, if it leads into the back of the school, it would have been a pretty busy road still. Regardless of whether it's, a dead-end road or not, it leads into the back gate of the school, and I'm sure that not everyone's going to enter the school through the front gate. I'm sure there'll be some other kids as well that will be doing the same thing as Bung and going through the back gate of the school at that time. Unfortunately, on that morning, June 2nd, 2011, Bung never showed up for school. What happens next is kind of frustrating because, if you watch, true crime videos and you research missing persons cases, the first 24 to 48 hours of a case is crucial in finding that person. Because Bung was such a diligent student, she was always at school, she was never known to wag, she loved school, the teachers just assumed that she was sick. I'm not really sure what other schools are like, but I know that when I was at high school, if my mum didn't call the school and notify them that I was sick, they would actually call my mum and ask where I was. So either way, there'd be some sort of contact. This is kind of the biggest mistake in the case is that the school never actually called Bung's parents to notify them that she didn't show up for school. Obviously, they had just assumed that she was sick because of what I said before, she's such a good student. But it's kind of frustrating because you just shouldn't assume. Things happen and yeah. So Bung usually got home from school at around 3:30 to 4 o'clock, usually a bit earlier, usually around 3:30. And so on that day when it got to about 4 o'clock, Venita, her mother, was at home starting to wonder where she was. The phone rings at 4 o'clock and it's Diamai. I'm going to say it Diamai, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. She was actually Bung's best friend and she called the family home to remind Bung that they were playing football the next day. When Fred answered and heard this from Diamai, he asked her, why didn't you ask her at school today? And that's when she said that Bung wasn't at school today. And immediately Fred and Venita started to panic. As soon as Fred got off the phone, him and Venita drove the nearby streets. They drove to the school in hopes that they could see some sort of sign of where Bung could be. Then at 4:20, they went to the Knox police station, which is a nearby police station in that area, to notify Bung as missing. They began contacting nearby friends and family and anyone that may have had contact with Bung that day. They also put a ton of posters up on lampposts and traffic lights in the area, and I just remember back then, I remember seeing them all the time. When I used to drive through the sets of lights in that area, when I'd go to the train station, bus stops, her posters were everywhere for so long. And it's kind of strange to think, but sometimes you might still come across one of the posters that was put up. So immediately the police got involved. Detectives started door knocking hundreds of houses in the area. And unfortunately, it wasn't before long until they got the homicide squad involved. Everywhere that I read said that the homicide squad didn't get involved because they assumed the worst, but they actually got involved because they had more, skills and knowledge on these kinds of cases. They also traced large groups of people that had gone through that area in that day, people like tradesmen, people like anyone that was coming in and out of the school. Maybe they were like fill-in teachers, delivery drivers as well, and just general traffic that travelled through that area on that day. They watched through many hours of CCTV footage, you know, CCTV from like train stations, shopping centres, even just like random sets of lights in the area. Unfortunately, where Bung was, there was really no CCTV. It was in like a back suburban street. It wasn't like on a main road or anything. Police also questioned known sex offenders in the nearby area. They also searched brothels after some people claimed to have seen a young Asian girl in nearby brothels. And they also went through Bung's social media accounts. Apparently she had a couple, but none of these things ever led to any sort of lead or anything being found. It's hard for me to say this just because I couldn't find a lot of information on this, but in one of the credible resources that I got some of this information off, it said that Bung left her house at 8:30 a.m. and on Harcourt Road she was seen at 8:55 a.m. by a neighbour, which was just 130 metres from the school gate. Now, if this is true, it's kind of confusing because, you know, it was only a 10-minute walk to school. So if she did leave at 8:30 a.m, she should have got to school at 8:40 roughly, and she didn't. Apparently she was seen at 8:55, so what was she doing for 25 minutes on her way to school? There was actually a report made that a week earlier, a 16-year-old girl was attempted to be abducted in Ringwood East, which is just a short 15-minute drive from Boronia. It's unknown whether this could be related, but it doesn't seem unlikely that maybe there was someone scouring the area trying to find a young girl that looked easy enough to just grab off the street. In 2013, a man actually claimed to have hit Bung and killed Bung, and in a panic, he buried her body in a nearby reserve. But after police were questioning this man, there was no consistency with his story at all. There was so many holes, and they didn't find the remains. They went through the reserve that he said that he had buried her in, and they found nothing. A lot of people find those kinds of claims like strange that the police didn't look into it further. But what you have to remember is like a lot of people that either have, I guess, mental problems, have been in jail for similar things, they often make these things up and try to claim that they did it. And the reason that they often do this is because they feel like a sense of accomplishment that they have done it, even though they haven't. They like being acknowledged for something. Police also questioned Robert Knight, who was released from jail and was living in the area at the time of Bung's disappearance. He had kidnapped and sexually assaulted 2 schoolgirls in 1980 and 1996. Police, after questioning Robert Knight for some time, ruled him out as a suspect. Since 2011, there have been thousands and thousands of people writing in about things that they think they have seen. They have thought they had seen Bung. But unfortunately, all these have led to nothing. There have been 2 potential sightings of Bung on the morning of June 2nd, one in Boronia and one in Rowville, which is just about 15 minutes from Boronia. The first being of an Asian girl looking out the back window of a white Ford Falcon, and this Falcon was driven by a Caucasian man in his 50s or 60s with a slicked back hairstyle and tattoos. And the second being an Asian girl sitting in the front seat of a white station wagon, potentially a Holden HQ Kingswood, driven by a Caucasian man in his late 40s or 50s who also had tattoos. What's interesting about these 2 potential sightings of Bung is that they both said that it was in like a white wagon and that the girl was looking out the window, which, I mean, it's kind of similar, so maybe they did see Bung. Unfortunately, neither of these 2 potential sightings led police to anything. They couldn't trace the car, they couldn't trace the man, not even with like CCTV. Police have also put out a $1 million reward for any information that the public can give to them. Okay, so now let's just get into the theories, and I'll also tell you some of my thoughts on the case. First off, I just want to say how frustrating it is that, you know, there was a 10-minute gap for her to go missing. Like, that is just what? That person that took her or did something with her, whatever happened to Bung, they had 10 minutes to do it within. And this was at like a peak period. 8:30 a.m. on a school morning, right near a school. It wasn't like it was like some country school or like, you know, Bung was walking from her house to a bus stop right around where people would be getting dropped off for school. And I just find it so strange that no one saw anything. How could no one see something, anything, like whether it looked suspicious or not? Surely someone saw her that morning. There's a few different theories. Kind of one main theory that I guess a lot of the media and like the resources that I've read have, I guess, gone with and stuck to. And that theory is that Bung was snatched off the street by a complete stranger. Now, for me, reading this theory, there's like a couple of inconsistencies with it. I just find it really unlikely that if she was snatched by a complete stranger, you know, there would have been some kind of struggle. She would have either have screamed or, you know, if he was like holding his hand over her mouth, she would have been kicking, moving, like someone would have saw that happen. Maybe they lured her in. Maybe they offered her a lift to school. But I mean, this kind of seems unlikely because if the sightings match up and are true, she was only like 100 to 200 meters away from the school. Why would she accept an offer from a complete stranger to go 200 meters up the road? That just seems really unlikely to me. The second theory is that maybe Bung had a stalker. You know, they went through her Facebook and her social media accounts and found no trace of her having any sort of relationship with anyone unknown. But maybe it's similar to like the recent Jamie Kloss case where she had a stalker that watched her get off the bus every day after school. Maybe Bung had the same thing. Maybe someone followed her every single morning and knew her route and just chose on that day to take her. The next theory is that maybe it was a parent. This theory is actually quite possible. Maybe Bung saw her friend's dads or mums or whatever it is and stopped and said hello. Maybe they were getting stuff out of the car or getting in the car after just dropping their kids off. Maybe they wanted to show Bung something. Maybe they said they had something for her that her friend wanted to give her. Or maybe there was something in the car that Bung had left in their car the previous week or so. I don't actually rule this one out. Like, I think that is quite likely that it could have been a parent because it wouldn't raise any alarms. No one would think anything out of the ordinary if she was talking to one of her friend's dads or mums right out front of the school. Like, that doesn't look suspicious to me at all. Another theory that's quite similar to the one I just spoke about is that maybe Bung was stopped by a teacher. Maybe it was actually a teacher that offered to pick Bung up and drive her to school. You know, and if this is the case, she spends so much time with her teachers. She sees them every day and they would know her so well. If you were a teacher, it wouldn't be hard to offer one of your students a lift to school and then just not take them there. The only thing that doesn't add up with this theory is that the school never made any claims of any teachers not showing up for school that day or being late, which if a teacher did take Bung or do something with Bung, you know, they would have been late for school or at least not have shown up at all. So these theories kind of tie in with the idea that it was actually someone that she knew. It was someone that knew Bung, knew her routine, knew what she was like, and knew how to, I guess, lure her in. Theory is one that is not unlikely either. So for this whole case, most of the media and the police have been focusing on the idea that Bung was put into a car. I guess this kind of seems more likely just because of the accounts that people have, you know, said that they have seen an Asian girl looking out the back of a car. But, you know, what if she wasn't put in a car? If you've ever researched or watched videos or read about JC Lee Dugard, she was actually held captive in the back of a couple's house for 18 years. It's not unlikely that this could have happened to Bung as well. Maybe she's still alive and being held captive like a few hundred meters away from her house. What if she wasn't put into a car? What if a neighbor on one of those roads that morning asked her to help them with something, or, you know, she was petting their dog or something, and, you know, they started a conversation with her and managed to lure her in to the house where they could easily grab her and put her somewhere. Maybe one of those houses has a basement or a garage or some sort of way that she could be concealed and no one would ever know that she was being held captive there. There was actually no resource that said either that police, you know, thoroughly searched houses in the area. There was only sources that said that they had, you know, door knocked and asked questions, but there was no vigorous search of every single house in the area. Which, I mean, it wouldn't even take them that long to search houses, and if people refused to have them search a house and they couldn't get a search warrant, that would immediately make that person look suspicious and maybe they could become a suspect. And the last theory is one that, I mean, they have to kind of look at because it seems like it could be something, but I don't necessarily agree with it. And that is the theory that Fred, Bung's stepfather, has done something to her. There's a few things that do add up and a few things that don't add up with this theory. The few things that do add up is that he was home that morning. You know, he'd just come home from his night shift. So he was in the area and had seen Bung that morning. The other thing is, like, he's her stepfather. There's a lot of cases where stepfathers start resenting their stepchildren and do horrible things. But some things that don't add up with this theory is that, you know, Bung had an older sister, Pang, and Fred never did anything with Pang. And what reason is there for him to have resented Bung more than he resented Pang? He also made a lot of effort in the investigation. You know, he went on television and made a plea. He has spoken to lots of different media about the case. To this day, he still hasn't given up hope either. He still writes about it and he still speaks about it and just hopes that one day she will come home. What also doesn't add up with this is that there were witnesses that saw her walking to school that morning. So, I mean, if he was at home and she was walking to school, unless he did like a drive-by and offered last minute to drive her to school, but I don't know, I personally don't think that that is what happened. And I've just got a quote from Fred here as well that I'm going to read out. That's the hard thing. There's just nothing. It's like 1 minute she's there and the next she's gone. But you don't just walk down a street and vanish. Somebody knows something. They just need to have a conscience and come forward. We want to hear any information, even if it's bad. There's been a few, I guess, awareness campaigns for this. You know, she's part of the Missing Persons Victoria. She's actually been placed on as a mural on Hosier Lane in Melbourne, which is a really famous street or lane, alleyway, whatever you want to call it. Quote from Dynamite, which is Bung's best friend, and she says, "I can't walk home by myself at night time. I can't sleep in the dark without a light on. I've had counselling, but it doesn't help because there's no closure. It's agonising not knowing where my best friend is and whether she's safe, and I really cannot imagine the pain her parents have gone through. They're heartbroken." Dynamite actually had to move away to New South Wales because she just couldn't handle being in the situation. Vinita, who is Bung's mother, actually returned to Thailand to, I guess, practice her Buddhism and be at solace with the whole situation. She didn't really want to be around like the media and be in the area that Bung went missing from. It just was like a constant reminder to her of what had happened. So that's pretty much it for this case, guys. Bung would have been 22 this year, and it's just such a sad case. Just so hard to believe that it happened so close to where I used to live. You just don't think that these things can happen to you or to anyone that you know until they do. And unfortunately for Bung, I can't imagine what she would have been going through or what she has gone through. To me, I really do think that she was taken by someone that she knew. I just find it so hard to believe that she was taken by a complete stranger and, you know, no one saw it. Not only that, but she was 13 years old. She wasn't super young and vulnerable. Like, I feel like when you're 13, you're old enough to know not to get into cars with strangers. I just wanted to make this video because I feel like it's kind of lost a bit of light. I don't really find much more information on it. I don't really hear anyone talking about it anymore, and she could still be out there. She could be found one day. If anyone watching this video does have any further information or, you know, has seen something or knows someone that has seen something, you can call Crime Stoppers on 1-800-333-000 to report anything. And I highly urge everyone to, you know, share this video, to read more up about it. Like, if there's things that you find that I haven't covered in this video, please, by all means, like, leave it in the comments down below. Also, if you have any other theories that I haven't covered, I would love to know your thoughts as well, because I mean, I've just covered a few of the theories and I'm sure there's like heaps more. So if there's a theory that you believe is really quite possible, I would love for you to leave it down below. And my thoughts and my prayers go out to Bung's family and her friends. You know, they haven't had closure since 2011, and I just can't imagine what it would be like, you know, living not knowing whether she's safe or whether she's alive, and I just can't imagine what they have gone through. So that's it for today's case, guys. I hope you are well and I hope you stay safe wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, guys.